my experience in vendor management is the only reason that I was able to succeed in other things. If you remember, I said some of my vendors in the past, they actually became my clients in the future. And some of them, they became friends, very good. Some of them actually, they became family.
Ahmed, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andre. I'm very happy to be with you.
Where are you joining us from?
I am right now. I'm in Cairo.
Is that your hometown?
Yes, Cairo is my hometown. Yes.
What is it that you do in Egypt?
A lot of stuff. One of them is actually localization. So
you do other things outside of localization?
I'm running a small translation and localization agency. Also, one of the board members of the Egyptian Association for Globalization and Language Solutions that we call EGLS. I'm doing some consultancy and training for individuals and companies in Egypt and in the Middle East.
Maybe for starters, can you let us know how you got into localization? What was your first touch with localization?
Well, it was a very, very, very long time ago. I was young. I was like fond of translation and writing. And maybe that was even before the college years. Me and a couple of my friends, we were interested in translation. And it was kind of a hobby, to bring some novels and maybe lyrics from songs and stuff like that. So we like reading all the time. Actually, during the college, I was kind of a freelancer, translating with some of my friends. And I think I used to receive some kind of a nice feedback about translation style and writing style. So after the college, I joined the army for some time, and I joined some different jobs in IT and sales and marketing. One of my friends actually sent my CV to a localization agency.
But did you know about it, or was it a surprise?
Perhaps that friend thought, hey, you were doing some translation, and you
right.
like writing and stuff. Maybe this will be nice. And I received the phone call. This is when I got involved in localization in a formal manner.
So you got a job just like that with, let's say, did you have any education?
Yeah, I studied actually languages.
Oh, okay.
I was a student of languages. I studied Greek and Latin. Yeah.
Okay.
So during my college years, I was very much into languages. Basically, we were studying Italian, but I hardly remember, although I really liked it. And the English, of course, we were using English as a medium language for translation and writing some paper and stuff like that. And of course, Arabic, because Arabic is my native language. But you could be a native Arabic, but you do not really master the language. But I really like to explore more into the classic Arabic and poetry and writing and novels and stuff like this. Maybe this helped a lot in shaping how I write and how I translate.
Right.
But I cannot say that I had any experience with localization before I joined a professional agency.
Right. That's what I wanted to ask. Like, what was the difference between? Because from what you're saying, like it was like your hobby, translating novels and poetry. That sounds very, like noble. And then you hit the reality of the job, which maybe you don't get to translate anything so interesting as novels and poetry. So how do you remember your first days with the localization agency?
It was very nice because I was I received a couple of offers. One of them is to be like a junior coordinator, a small project manager.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is to join the vendor management.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I remember, it was like the very first unit, the very first department in any localization agency in Egypt or in the Middle East. There was nothing like this before, because I think before this, the project managers used to deal on their own, find the translators in a random manner. And this was the very first department who started to do the vendor management in a professional manner.
Mm-hmm.
And before this, I did not have any idea. But when I was receiving this offer, I really liked it. I felt like I really need to be in this department, not the other one. Because I remember my interviewer told me, in this vendor management, you will get to recruit, and you will get to screen CVs, and you will get to find translators and suppliers from different countries. Mm-hmm. and in different languages. And in this project coordination thing, you will have to deliver the files and receive the files and send the files to the team and run some kind of operation. I did not really much, I was young, I did not really much imagine, but I really like this idea of recruiting. And, so I said, all right, let's see it. And I remember my very first week, because it was the hardest.
Mm.
They give me an assignment like a second day. Some of my friends or former colleagues, they taught me how to see the system, read the emails, send the proposals, perhaps post on different portals like Prus.com. And there was, back in the day, there was something called, I think, Go Translators or some .com back in the day. And they taught me some basics, and they said, go on your own. You have a request. There was a request, I remember, in my very first week to recruit, I think, something like 20 translators from 20 countries or 20 languages. And I was, all right, let's do it. Let's be in China today. Okay, let's be in Germany. Let's go to Afghanistan. Let's find people in Syria. And it was very interesting for me. And I didn't like, to go home, because I really felt excited that I'm going to communicate with all these people and hire them and get them to work with us. It was very excited, and it's still.
Did you figure out on your own how to find the right people?
Of course not, because I had some very good mentorship in this time. I had to admit that. They helped me all the way to, yes, you can do this. In order to do this, you have to do that. Because it was like a new department. We did not have that much of a documentation or perhaps training. We were actually trained by trying and exploring.
Mm-hmm. So who do you remember being your mentor? Was it someone from the project management? Because you mentioned that the project managers used to do this on their own, or was it someone like operations manager?
I remember actually my direct supervisor was a former project manager, I think. Mm-hmm. It was very helpful. And a couple of my colleagues in the same department, one of them was a translator. So I learned a lot from his mindset being a translator. Mm-hmm. He was in the localization industry for maybe few years, and he had his input and he had his understanding of things. So he gave me a lot of help. And I remember we had also some mentorship from the top management in the company. They were very much involved because they created this department and they wanted this idea to succeed. So there was not much of I cannot say that it was only one mentor, but I had many mentors, and I was open for life. And I had, yes, okay, anybody can be my mentor.
Right. So to this day, you still, when we had our intro call, you still mentioned that vendor management is like your specialization, I would say. Like you can do many things, you have experience from many things, but you prefer vendor management, right?
Yeah. I still prefer vendor management, and it's kind of a passion. I speak about it all the time. I still try to find ways to develop the skills and maybe teach someone else. Although I understand that, although I've been involved in other functions, and I cannot say less about them. For example, like I really also enjoy project management, but I understand that this part about humans, about human resources is very important, because this industry, in my opinion, is all about the people, not just only about the technology or the technical part, but it's all about the people.
So how has your, I don't know, approach to vendor management changed over the years?
Well,
is there some?
This is also a very nice question. During my very, very first days in the vendor management department, I asked my direct supervisor, and he's a friend, and I asked him a question. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow? How about the career? I was like curious, and there is a very big difference between being curious and being confused, because in these days, a lot of young people are confused. But I was asking, perhaps you agree. That's why you too much social
media. Never thought about it.
Too much social media to be confused about. But I was asking because everything was new to me. And I asked them this question: what do you think about the next step? In some cases, the interviewer or maybe your boss will give you some, like bullshit words, and he will say, the future is bright and we are growing and all. We have this. We have this in our culture a lot. We're like partners. You are and stuff like. No, he did not. Actually, his answer was, to me, is my type of answer. He said, "I don't know."
Right.
You have to make your way, and I trust you will do. And I said, okay, this answer, I like this answer. If he would answer. Maybe if he would have answered me something else, is like, oh, the company is growing and we are going to heaven and stuff like this, I would I wouldn't believe.
Right. But
I'd like to add something. Sorry to interrupt you. In this department, we tried a lot of methodologies. And one of the nicest things they did, they kept us very, very close with the project managers. We were actually on CC. Whenever we do this hiring and placement and recruiting, we were involved with the project managers like his shadow. And this is what I really liked about the job. And also, I really enjoyed learning from the project managers. And later on, in my career, I discovered that it's not the same thing in every vendor management department. Sometimes they are separate. Bring us, you have a recruitment target to do, and like we need this number of resources, this number of translators, and thank you so much. We don't need you anymore. This is what we did not do. And I think this helped a lot in learning what it is to be involved in, finding a job to someone and helping him to do the job the right way.
At what point did you start thinking about some sort of strategy?
Because I'm kind of myself, I really like to take initiative, perhaps give some ideas and stuff like this. And I usually I used to go into conversation with my superiors,
Mm-hmm.
introducing some ideas. We can do that. We can do this. They were actually open for ideas about the vendor management because, as I said, it was a new department and they needed some kind of, a flexible team to be able to give some ideas and exchange ideas. One of the things I remember introducing full-time recruitment, and why can't we do it? And I remember also that the agency I used to work in, they were actually expanding and they trying to open for new services and in different countries. This actually helped a lot because I used to sit with them in meetings, although I was like a young VM. And
Mm-hmm.
I used to give some ideas along with the reporting system and how many translators do we have in this language and stuff like that. I think this helped a lot in creating some kind of strategy,
Mm-hmm.
understanding the needs of our clients in this time. And in
Mm-hmm.
my case, my clients actually were the PMs or perhaps the business development or the marketing and sales team. So I learned
Right.
a lot from it, being very close with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it was like an evolution to get into something which we would call strategy.
Yeah. And actually, it opened my mind to a lot of things about how a localization agency can be established. How can we kick off new services and things like that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was something big, not just because I was young and ambitious, but it was something big even for our culture or maybe in our country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you were to, I don't know, join a company right now and you would be the vendor manager. So I assume that you would start with a strategy right now instead of just
Yeah.
being told who to recruit to. So what is actually, what do you consider part of the vendor strategy? Like, does it have any key points that you need to cover and answer?
Yeah. When it comes to a vendor management strategy, from my understanding and experience, it has to be aligned with the company's vision
Right.
and the company's actually financial targets, the company's technical objectives, the language that they would like actually to cover, the regions that they would like to operate in. This is what this is the key characteristics from my understanding about vendor management strategy. Why I say this? Because back in the day, one of the strategies that we used to do is that everyone in the team were actually in charge of a certain region. I was quite lucky because they asked me, "What do you think? What do you think you like?" I have a thing for Southeast Asia. I love the Orient. I love India and China and Thailand and Vietnam. Although I've never been to these countries, but it's like let me try. I see a lot of like the project managers are requesting some like Chinese and Vietnamese language, and let me try in this. And then someone else in the department was in charge of African languages. At the very beginning, we was like, the department is providing all the languages that they can lay a hand on. And I joined sometime later in recruiting translators in East European languages. So I understand how to build a strategy for each region, how the prices are going, how the rates are going, how the translators are. There is some kind of, I can say it's some kind of magic for each region. It has its own, what do you say? I'm not able to explain how it is, but it's like
nuances or flavors or.
Yeah, it's like every region had its own, mood.
Vibe.
Yeah, it's like a vibe thing. Yeah. I hope I was able to answer this question very quickly because you told me you don't need to use a a presentation. So
Yeah. So this is where I'm interested in. So how does the strategy for, let's say, Eastern Europe differ from strategy for Southeast Asia?
first thing, it depends on the accounts. It has a lot to do with the sales part or the marketing part, the accounts, localization accounts that we were supposed to manage. This thing affects a lot when you are selecting translators. And I remember the very first days, maybe for me, that I was recruiting for localization projects. I remember reading, because as I told you, we were very much involved with the project managers. They kind of let us read the instructions and be with the production team. This helped me very much to understand if Google asked for this, so this is kind of a strategy in vendor management. If Google is asking for this kind of job description or kind of specification in a person who will join the team, so this is their understanding on how they would like to do things. I think this answered the question. And in some countries, for example, in Southeast Asia, back in the day, it was very easy to find a variety of translators. For example, in China, because the numbers are huge. You can try the same thing in a different country, and it's not going to be very easy. And perhaps I remember when we spoke first time about Malaysia, because this is where I lived for some time, and I actually worked in one of the LSPs in Malaysia. I remember back in the day, there was not much of a localization agency in Malaysia, perhaps like 15 years ago or something. Localization back in the day was mainly produced by teams of freelancers. They did not have this kind of a organized localization agency. And I think this was a development in the market was like natural. It starts with people who are learning things on their own, and then they develop to be in an organized shape, in an agency shape of some kind. And this also was very, very, very interesting, because when we were about to establish this startup back in the day, we can say a startup like 15 years ago, we were talking about the vendor management strategy, but it was not really the strategy about vendor management. It was like the recruitment strategy, the whole thing about recruiting the whole team, including project managers, including translators, coordinators, maybe DTB. As I remember, we discussed during one of the meetings, and we said, in Malaysia, I don't think they have a localization agency, but maybe they have some kind of local translation shops, small offices. They do some kind of local demand for typical translation, like legal documents and stuff like that. But localization is mainly done by maybe freelancers. And this is a very good opportunity. And it's like a blue ocean thing. So when we traveled to Southeast Asia, it was the same as we expected. And if you would ask me, how did you learn this? We did not have that much, like marketing research agency to help us with reports and stuff. We learned this from vendor management. We understood this from being in communication with Malaysian translators. By this time, there was not much of a company that we can say that this is a localization company. There were maybe, as I said, government offices or government companies, but there was not that much of a localization agency. And in 2019, I've been maybe to the latest or the one before the latest Loc World conference. It was the very first one, Loc World, to be organized in Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
And this proves to me a lot of progress that the market is taking. You go to Malaysia, that's why you understand how important that Malaysia is like a growing economy, and there is a chance that companies will come and the translators will come and people will join and it was very nice.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that you mentioned earlier when it comes to strategy, that it's related to the financial objectives of the LSP. So this to me is the tricky part, because of course the company always wants to find the cheapest freelancers, but at the same time they want the highest quality. So how do you balance these two, I would say sometimes maybe even contradictory objectives of finding someone who's cheaper or within the margins, but at the same time be able to do good quality work?
Well, yeah, it is a challenge. And it is a challenge actually to balance between the quality and the price. And I remember times where prices actually were higher than now because of many things, like introducing machine translation and maybe introducing more translators are being produced actually from the factory of life. Financial targets, I seem to think they affect, because every year a company will sit down and discuss how they would like to increase revenues and reduce the cost. So there are actually means to reduce the cost affecting the translators, like introducing technology, like software, quality control software, using translation management system. These are the things that maybe will reduce the cost, can reduce the cost. And in my opinion, we have to think about this stuff before thinking about negotiating the prices with translators. But unfortunately, I lived through the time where the financial crisis in 2008, it was a time that even translators themselves, they were actually offering a lot of discounts so they get a lot of work. They get more work. They were actually affected. So I still believe that financial targets or maybe objectives for any company affect their vendor management strategy. This is one thing. The other thing that perhaps you would agree with me, and you've been a project manager, you've seen it all, that some companies, of course, they prefer, all right, we are not going to outsource to LSPs or regional language vendors. We are going to go directly to the freelancers and try as much as we can to reduce the cost and remove the middleman and stuff like this. So yeah, financial objectives, they do affect the vendor management strategy big time. And they still do.
Have you ever been in a situation where the requirements for a price for a certain account was very low, that you just couldn't find anyone with a, let's say, good quality?
Yeah, we had a lot of fights with the project managers.
So how do you get out of that situation?
We negotiate in the ups and downs. We negotiate everywhere. And this is one of the options. The other option is to try to find new blood. And sometimes you have to take this decision. It's like, I cannot work with generals all the time. I'm going to need privates and young
soldiers.
Young soldiers. Yeah. I was actually reading something about the guy who expanded the McDonald's, Ray Kroc. Perhaps you heard about him.
Yes.
And one of the things, the strategy that he introduced, or maybe not him, it was the brothers McDonald's, I believe, that we do not need to bring a professional, experienced cook, but our system is going to be very easy, very efficient, that we do not need a cook. We just need some young men, they are going to do stuff like this. I cannot say that it's the same in translation, but we had to do it. And I was lucky to be in a team who invested a lot of time in training, trying to develop a young generation of translators or maybe service providers. This was one of the things that kept them very strong, because it's all right. We can manage. We will do extra work. We will train young, or maybe inexperienced translators or DTB specialists, and we are going to create new soldiers. One day they are going to be the generals.
Right. Makes sense.
When we speak about strategies, like I like war examples.
So maybe going to the war examples, would you raise the salaries of the soldiers once they reach the general level? Like how, and to put it in our words, like my salary first. But what I'm trying to say is that I get the idea that we are here to also give opportunities to the young blood, like you mentioned, to see if they have the potential. And the good thing for the companies is that hopefully the young people are not charging that much as let's say the veterans of the translation industry. But then if I'm doing a good job, would I ever have a chance to increase my rates as a freelancer? What would be your criteria for saying that, okay, you've been with us for quite some time, we love your work, and we are actually going to increase your rates? Has that ever happened?
Yeah, it happened. It happened a lot. Especially that at the start of the year, of a new year, you can find this kind of a request to, inflation. Guys, we need to, I would like to discuss my rate, and I've been working with you for some time, and especially those who were actually work in ongoing projects. They had this, and I can understand it very clearly because I have been on their side. I've been a freelancer, and I know what it is. Everybody wants to have more. And once again, it's all about the negotiation, because sometimes we used to sit down in price review meetings, pricing review meetings, and there are the salespeople who would like to please their customers as much as they can, and they say, we have pressure. There is a machine translation is coming. The future is not promising. We have targets to achieve, and we sit down and we say, we don't want to lose the translators.
Right.
Honestly, my own personal belief that I would invest, and I would like to keep my translator satisfied and happy as much as I can. I have to be logical. I am a businessman. Also, I need to have some profit. But I prefer that the translators are satisfied, because the translator will help me in this project and in this project and another project. And the translator is my real soldier in a very, very big fight with different, I don't need to say enemies, but with different directions. It will help me with this client. If this client is not satisfied, we will try to find him another. And I think one of the successful parts of a vendor management strategy is to be able to have backups and to have backup plans. So you will not get stuck at any moment. This makes a lot of sense, because I've seen it when translators are sending, maybe not at the start of the year, but he's having his situation, something is changing. He moved from a country to another, and this was very, very, very a very important thing. I remember recruiting translators, for example, Japanese translators who live outside of Japan, and this is very common that when they live outside of Japan, their living standards are maybe different from how it was in Japan. If you have any friends in Japan, they will agree with this. So
my girlfriend is Japanese.
Oh, really? Awesome. This is awesome. I hope I'm not bluffing or maybe imagining, but I remember that translators maybe who moved from Japan to live in Malaysia, where I met a lot of them, or they lived in Thailand, they were much more flexible about giving lower rates. Yeah, because it's all about the economy.
Right.
I seem to believe.
Yeah, it's a pretty common sense.
That she's Japanese. I actually thought for some time that you were originally from Southeast Asia because you have this look, right?
Yes.
Are you?
I am not, but I just recently found out that I'm mixed. So I'm originally from Slovakia, but recently I found out based on a DNA test that part of me is Asian Chinese.
Awesome. This is awesome.
Oh, yeah. So going back to the backups that you mentioned, and you also touched on that before, that you sometimes want to have agencies like in Malaysia, but there were no agencies. So you had to resort to freelancers.
Yeah, so back in the day.
I think this could technically be considered part of a strategy. So when do you prefer freelancers and when do you prefer agencies? Like what is the difference?
Well, this is a very nice question because it's kind of happening a lot these days that some of LSPs, the LSPs, maybe the like medium-sized LSPs or small LSPs, they started to prefer to communicate directly with freelancers or to work directly with freelancer instead of outsourcing to an agency. And I understand why. Technology made it very easy. If you have some kind of translation management system, so all the translators are logged on it and they have their profiles and they've sent the request to them like a mass mail. And you get to understand the performance, like when they finish the jobs and they close to SmartCat stuff and things like this. And also they wanted to remove this middleman, I seem to think, but my own understanding that a freelancer is individual. His capacity for production, his ability to solve problems is, with no offense to him, is still limited. That's why an agency, it's a company. So people, they cooperate with each other. I had this discussion with a lot of like Egyptian translators. They say the companies are, like they suck in our blood and they control all the market and we would like to work with the clients directly. And perhaps you've seen this, yeah. So I asked the guy a question and I said, so when you send some files to your translator, to another translator, to one of your friends, aren't you acting like a company? And honestly, I've seen this in the past. I can see that in growing localization market. I've seen this in Turkey, in Turkish language. We had incredible freelancers, people with very, very good quality. The rates were, because they were young, back in the day, like 15 years ago, they are not the same persons 5 years later. He's more experienced, he's stronger. I can say he's a colonel and not really a general, but he's tough. But yeah, I've seen this kind of development in a service provider, but still a company, they must have something different to add. And in my own point of view, when I actually led projects and I led marketing campaigns and vendor management strategy, I do not really mind to work with either of them. I don't really mind to, but my expectations from a language service provider, from an agency, are actually higher. My expectations from them to solve their own problems. And I prefer to give a helping hand to the individual because I understand. I've been there myself. I've been like a lone wolf working in alone, like a freelancer. I don't have anybody to help me I've seen this very clear in a lot of the African languages. In some point in time, it was very hard. It was very hard. These people struggled a lot, you know. I remember sometime when they had electricity is cut from them, like after 5 in some countries. They had the electricity, internet is cut after 5. They had some kind of a like military coup or whatever. These people, they actually suffered a lot to provide good localization services. And they deserve a lot of appreciation for their effort. Now, things may be changed. I prefer to be flexible. I prefer to offer some kind of a good proposal for a freelancer that fits his capacity. And in the same time, I do not really mind to work with another agency.
Right. Would there be any scenarios where you would prefer one or the other?
Yeah. I have to be honest. Sometimes the price, the rates, they control the decision. Sometimes, but not all the times. Yeah. I would prefer to be with an agency because they have their problem or the technical problem. They can take care of volumes, bigger volumes. They can solve problems. And in some cases, I would prefer to be with freelancers because I would like to communicate with them. And in the past few years, we started to have this kind of projects where the clients want to have direct communication with the translators, especially big tech companies. They started to create their own systems and their own. Perhaps you have seen something like this. And they say, we don't need to send the files to project managers. Your translators will have to log on the system. So they need to communicate directly with the freelancers. They have this type of projects that if you think about it, if you are a translator, I would love to read the instructions directly. I would love to receive instructions directly. I would love to be guided directly without someone is perhaps copying and pasting someone else's document.
Right.
I seem to agree with this kind of time management thing. And if you are going to do some time management, you will have to make some sacrifice.
You mean sacrifice on the cost part, or?
You will have to sacrifice, on the cost. And you will have to sacrifice maybe losing one of the layers in the chain. Yeah.
Right. Okay. When is there actually a point for a company, let's say the tech company, to start looking for someone outside of the company to help with the localization? Like, when is the point where you would need to get a help of vendor manager to start looking for vendors to help you with outsourcing? Or in which case is it also still good to try to look for someone in-house? In which case I think it would be handled by recruitment, right?
Yeah. If I understand your question clearly, what forces a big tech company to hire someone to work in-house, right? Like a localization.
Maybe we don't have to talk about the big tech company. Maybe you can also talk about like an LSP, right? Because LSPs also have to outsource, but some of them also have some languages covered in-house by their employees.
Yeah. I actually witnessed this kind of a strategy, and I was at a point of time a part of a recruitment team who recruited full-time staff. I recruited actually full-time staff in most of the Asian countries and Egypt here, especially the translators. And I seem to think that production and demand controls this decision, or maybe at least this is how we thought about it. Because if I have a certain account that is actually stable, or a certain contract that is stable, and we have the production everything is planned. Every translator is going to translate like 2,000 words a day for the period of 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. That depends. I would go for the full-time model to recruit the translators in-house. And I've seen how things are progressing. I've seen accounts that they started very small. So we had to outsource to freelancers outside of the companies. And when things are growing, we decide to maybe expand a little or maybe change the strategy for a part-time recruitment. We started by offering the same translators. We have an opportunity that you can be one of our part-timers or maybe full-time. And I've seen in many cases back in the day, they used to agree, right, it's a very good opportunity. I can be a full-time translator. I have my salary at the end of the month, and I will have some kind of insurance, and I'm going to be an employee. I've seen how the financial crisis in 2008 affected this model, because some of the accounts actually were gone. And if you are a language service provider, you maybe think once and twice, how would I keep the people on my payroll while I don't have any work for them? Very hard decision. And I think this is exactly what happened with the COVID-19. Many companies started to lay off the translators because we lost our accounts. Maybe we are not able to afford paying the full-time salary anymore.
So let's talk about the interesting question for me. How do you actually find good vendors? And what are you looking for? Let's say, okay, the price is of course a main criteria that maybe serves like the top filter for you. Like if people fall within that certain price, but then if they fall and you have still 10 people and you only need to, I don't know, find one or two, what are you looking for?
I was reading in an MD book, The Theory of a Translation Company by Renato. And I really like how they broke down the selection process. They actually broke it down into numbers. And you had this kind of weight for every category, every selection category. The price is one of them. And it depends on on the company's strategy to give the price a higher weight. But it's, in my opinion, it's not everything.
Right.
Because it will depend on where I'm going to place the translator. Am I going to place him in an account where I have zero profit? I will not be able to cover other costs, or I'm going to place him in something that is going to be flexible. But I seem to think that there are actually other criteria that we should think about, not only the price, the experience, the years of experience. And you can find that I use a lot of military examples because I'm not a military guy, but I admire this idea of ranking and years of experience. And even in military, you can find a chief of staff. He has the same ranks, but the same ranks with another officer, but he's not in the same leadership position. It's the same thing. I believe that experience is not everything, because there are experienced translators, but they fail in technical parts. They don't know CAT tools. They are not willing to use a project management system. They resist the change. I think you would agree with, perhaps you met some of them.
Just today in the morning. I'm not going to go into details, but yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
And I have to be honest, this kind of, this type of translators or professionals who resist technology, they could be very good in what they do or something they do. The vendor manager, the very good vendor manager will not say no. and he will be able to place them where they best fit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that is the years of experience. Is there anything else that?
Technical, as I say, technical capacity, how many tools they master, how they actually solve the problems. The capacity is very important. How many words or pages they can produce. This is one of the things, because I've been a production guy, so I understand how it affects me. If I'm going to hire a team of 10 translators or 15 translators, all of them, they agree that they will translate 2,000 words. So I'm in heaven. All right, let's do it. But you can find someone, he has a day job, he has some other availability, and capacity is very important.
Okay. What about the infamous translation test? Do you think it should be part of every recruitment, or?
It is a necessity, I believe, but it's not everything. No, because I have seen translators, they would do very good in the translation test. They deliver very good quality, but in reality, it's as if you are hired someone else. And sometimes it happened. The person who did the test, perhaps maybe cheating or whatever, or maybe had this mood. And I think quality control is something else that we can maybe speak about like separately, because it's going to be very complex and diverse. But one of the things that, a translation test at the very beginning in the recruitment process is very important. And I prefer a translation test that is actually project-based, because it proves a lot that this person is going to be very good. And I remember the test that we received back in the day from Google, for example. It was not particularly a translation test. They tested some other, like Bob knowledge, like this translator, how he understands the Bob culture. There was this kind of test about Bob culture, test about English language, testing the English language. I remember, I think in some cases, some clients, they tested their knowledge of maybe CAT tools. They had this test about, do you know what is a TM? How would you manage some tags in a file? I think this kind of tests are very important. And if we are going to act like humans, I would like to perhaps add some psychology tests if need be. If we need to add some psychology tests, okay, I would prefer this, because we are going to be humans. And we're going I hate this idea that we are machines and, like I'm dealing with an email. Because I've seen this. And this will lead us to this idea of, expanding this translation management system that deals with you as just an email. You just another email and another number. And I'm going to send a mass email to some companies, big companies are doing this. And, it's not my turn. I know it is a strategy and it's successful and it works. But no, we are not likers on like Facebook. We just like, the translators are not like likers, These are humans. I still need this human thing, this human connection.
So how do you think, if I'm a LSP or a project manager, how can I keep the human touch with the translators while still trying to be efficient with my job?
If my job or my system actually forces me to be like, to use this kind of translation management system that deals with people as digital things and like just emails, it's a fact. We cannot actually deny it, because it is there and it is efficient and it is very good. But I think an LSP can do a lot of effort when it comes to be human. And maybe we can have some kind of like a quarter meeting with our translators. And honestly, when I was working in vendor management, I really liked this idea to meet with the translators, the freelancers. And I took every chance to like perhaps send them a mass mail at the end of the month, like, thank you very much for helping me in my projects and stuff. I hope that anyone to meet you one day. And I always like to keep this human part with the translators. And believe me, I still have connections with translators and freelancers I worked with like 15 years ago. And whenever I travel, wherever I go, these are the people I'm going to call. I go to Indonesia and I call my translators. Hey, I would like to meet you, and they show you around. Whenever they come to our country, I think this is something that I'm doing individually. I would recommend that any company would create some kind of rewarding system or perhaps appreciation system that they communicate with the vendors every once in a while, or maybe every quarter. I like some of the American LSPs where they make some kind of loyalty programs. You will find it very nice that they send an email to the vendors and they said, we are not going to pay you after 60 days. We are going to pay you after 30 days because you were helping us a lot in our projects. And this is like part of our loyalty program. It doesn't hurt that you can send a gift to the translators every year if you are able to do this. There are a lot of ideas that to help you get connected with your translators, your freelancers, or your vendors. I'm not sure if I can think of something else, but the best thing is going out for a cup of coffee. If you can. Yeah, that's why I really like the initiative, Loc Lunch initiative. Perhaps you heard about it. And I joined the Loc Lunchers here in Cairo, and we met with people. We met with also representatives from different countries. And it was very nice. This is a very nice to sit down and speak like humans and go out. And this is what really helps people to appreciate each other.
I like that idea. And I was wondering if you ever had a chance to implement such a program at any LSP, or maybe like part of it.
In a previous LSP, I created this kind of appreciation program where we voluntarily actually started to communicate with the vendor and send them some kind of a appreciation certificate at the end of the year, or perhaps at the end of a project. And I've been a freelancer and I know how it is to be like alone, working alone, or maybe working remotely with someone, and he would send you this gift. I knew from my friends who were actually working with Google and some very big tech companies, they do this all the time. They send you some products in a box. And it was very, very, very nice. And wherever I can, because maybe I cannot like increase the rate or something like that. But I would prefer something that is not a gift of some kind, that is not going to cost you very much.
Right.
Inviting also, because we were actually arranging a lot of training courses and development events and stuff like that. Inviting your vendors to join you in something like this is very, very nice. I've been a couple of years ago, before the coronavirus, I attended World. I attended this kind of a talk of one of the biggest LSPs in the world, and they were actually presenting with their client, some tech company, and they were like friends on the stage, and they were talking about the challenges. I really thought this is very good. If I bring my client, or my client brings me to a presentation, and we speak together about our success, our challenges. What I try to implement here is inviting my vendors, inviting my friends, anyone who lives in Egypt, for example, for an event or something. I think this is. I'm a person who likes PR. I like to go out. I like to see people. So these ideas come to my mind all the time. And I know some of my colleagues, or some of my friends, some of my previous supervisors, they kind of feel like this is a waste of time. I think they waste their time thinking that this is a waste of time.
Going back to the translation test, you said that it all starts with the translation test, and then you need to sort of monitor the quality of the vendors as they continue working with you. So how does vendor management go about it? Do you think it's more responsibility of the project managers? And if there are some issues, they should escalate to the vendor manager? Or is it also, you think, part of the VM's job to monitor the performance?
Well, I think the vendor managers, one of the main functions of a vendor management team is to monitor the performance. Because I can consider that they are the real supervisors of all the vendors.
Right.
Or perhaps this was the vision that I was raised upon 15 years ago. I had this idea, and I really like that the management, they give me this kind of privilege that you have to monitor the performance. So we have to think of ways to monitor the performance. And I think technology comes here because if we are dealing with some kind of ecosystem where project managers will have to give their feedback. I remember we used to prepare some kind of a survey that we send every month to the project managers. How do you think about the vendors in this language? Do you have any complaints? Of course, in many cases, they raise the complaints anyway. And I used to work with Localize, and I really liked how they did the vendor management back in the day, because they had this kind of a connection between the project management team and the vendor management. And they did this kind of a review. I think it was like every 3 months they did this kind of review. And they examined everything, scorecards when it comes to translation quality or the product quality. They reviewed everything. They discussed with the vendor what is going on, why we had this score. And they discussed also issues like performance and communication and adherence to instructions. Performance should be monitored by the vendor management, not only when they receive a complaint. And it's about the communication between the vendor management team and the project management, because in some cases I've seen the project management is like they work very hard, and they have even no time to complain or no time to report. I've seen this myself. I cannot say it's very professional, but a professional project management team should be able to report. Some of our project managers back in the day, they did not have this idea how to report, or they don't. No, bring me someone else. I need someone else. Okay, that's all. But I think these people did not survive. So monitoring is very important. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, when you see, how would you see people progressing? Like when they were actually only soldiers and they became generals, because you were actually watching them, seeing how they progress. I can tell you that back in the day, we did not have any LinkedIn, for example. There was no LinkedIn. But you could see that the guy is progressing on Bruce, that he's quite active, that he's taking this kind of feedbacks, and he's progressing in the market, and he's progressing in his relation with me. I hope I was able to answer this, because I'm a strong believer in development.
So do you think that the company should play active role in developing the freelancers?
Yeah.
Like organizing some training or investing?
Because, nowadays, and you would maybe agree with me, that even the companies are trying to attract the best talents to work with them.
Right.
So it can be some kind of a marketing strategy that the company should embrace.
Mm-hmm.
is to be able to attract the right talents, the freelancers to. And how would you attract me as a freelancer? You would give me a chance to develop. First of all, you will give me a lot of jobs. You will give me a lot of work. Okay, I would love that. But
Mm-hmm.
in the same time, you will give me a chance to develop.
Okay. What about the people that are not meeting the criteria over the time? Do you have to get rid of them, or do you just slowly stop giving them work and pretend that everything's okay?
I think in many cases it happened like naturally. If there is a vendor who's actually performing very well,
Mm-hmm.
you will find them like naturally that everybody wants to work with.
Right.
Yeah. And there are vendors, they were maybe doing it on purpose, or maybe they did not mean it, but they were actually pushing their clients to, this person's quality, this vendor's quality is very good. He's very good translators, but truly I cannot bear to see his name in my inbox. And I've seen this. Really, I've seen this.
Uh-huh.
Some vendors, specifically freelancers, or maybe someone in an agency. And I remember back in the days that some clients, they used to send emails, we don't want to work with this person. Find us another.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it happened actually naturally that the vendor who's providing service is not only about how good he is in translation, and it's not only about his rate as well, his price. I don't believe in this, but I believe in how he communicates, how he solves the problem, how he's proactive. I find young, maybe fresh graduate translators or vendors who are very impressive in making you as a client remember them. And I've seen this, and I can name few names if needed, that I trust these people with my life. So I seem to think, that it's a natural thing that you can mention also that the scorecards and the stars and everything, the evaluation you will get on a system, it's all about how you perform.
Mm-hmm.
And on another side, I think that, you've been a project manager. Maybe you were able to manage a vendor much better than another colleague, much better than another project manager. And I've seen this myself. When I was a project manager, some of the vendors, all right, we are going to work with Ahmed, but we don't work in the same LSP. He doesn't want to work with X or Z because how he's being treated. And, I've seen a lot of humiliation even in this kind of remote job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some clients, they push you to the limit. Some project managers, they push you to the limit that you will hate them and you will hate the job and you will not give them the performance I hate to say that this is kind of a personal thing. It's not really professional, but we are humans after all.
Right. So what did the few special ones who won your heart as a client, what did they do extra?
They showed up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They showed up all the time. That's why I really don't feel bad that I receive an email or a message from a vendor. I remember one of my supervisors in the past, he said, you have to understand that the vendor maybe he doesn't have a job. That's why he is chatting with you on a message and sending you a message and saying, hey, you have a very nice picture, or how are you today, and stuff like this. And I seem to think, no, I like this kind of, he reminds me all the time that he's available or he's here.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to work, he's quick to react. He is quick to respond. He takes initiative. And I was working with a couple of years ago with a young translator from Tunisia, and she was like that, like this. It's she tries to solve the problem. Even she doesn't have this very long experience, but she's trying to solve a problem, and she's trying to give you an idea. And in my perspective, as being a client, this is what I want. I want this person, this vendor, that acts like a real partner, like a part of the family. That's why I like to do this with my client most of the time. I like to check on them, send messages. How is everything? I like this when we first communicated with each other, because the very first time we communicated with each other, I like your strategy, because you send a small message. Hi, how are you doing? It's me. I'm interested to understand why you got connected to me. Of course. Yeah, this is very good. This is very good. It keeps you remembering.
All right. So before we go to the final, let's say, more general set of questions, is there anything that you think we should cover about vendor management, like something that you really want to highlight?
I think the previous questions were very good, and I think it's more like an advice to vendors. Is to try to explore more about the world, understand the industry, understand that localization is different, and this is what I try to teach people, because we do not study this in college, and I would advise to invest as much as you can in technical side to understand more tools, more know-how, and to look at the bigger picture. Not only that you are just a vendor in a corner, but you have to look at yourself in a different manner and try to be flexible. This is what I want to speak to the companies and to the LSPs, and that, we are not going to work with agencies. We will only to work with freelancers and stuff like this. I prefer that we would be more flexible about how we do the job.
Right, Ahmed. What are you curious about right now? Not related to localization, or if you're super curious about localization, sure. But
yeah, I'm not a tech person, but I started to be interested in data, in linguistic data, lexicography, and electronic dictionaries, and corpus, AI, the revolution of AI and machine translation. I wish I was a tech person. Maybe I could understand things more, because I feel that we live in this age, similar to, I'm fascinated about the time travel idea. So I seem to think that we live in this age in the localization industry, like in the same time when cars were invented. So people started to lose interest in riding horses and started to be interested in cars. So there was this kind of resistance between the past and the future. And my idea, maybe it's kind of weird, or maybe it's kind of philosophy a bit. It's a bit of philosophy that in these days, horses are very expensive. It is not for everybody, but they still exist. So I have this kind of point of view about the technology, and yes, we are going one way or another. Although I hate this idea about being just another email in a system, but this is life. We have to go on with it. I'm quite curious about data, creating data, especially that maybe this kind of market is in Egypt, or maybe in the Middle East, creating big Arabic corpus or data for AI or machine translation is something that is being developed, and I'm quite interested. Maybe, I don't know, maybe in the future we will have something innovative. We speak about it all the time when we sit down. How can we maybe create some kind of machine translation engine for Arabic language, for Arabic dialects, something like this? I have this kind of dream about, or maybe like an interest in this when it comes to the industry. I have other interests, of course, but
would it be an open source project, like available to everyone in the community, or would it be commercial thing?
We must make money one way or another.
Right.
We should, because investing time in creating something like this, I think maybe it could start at the beginning, like something like open source or maybe free for some people. But I think it's going to develop to be a paid service.
What is something that people seem to misunderstand about you?
A lot of things.
Okay.
A lot of things.
So give me one example.
I've been having a lot of fights and a lot of conflicts in the past few years. Maybe because I grew old. I'm not sure, but I've been having a lot of conflicts.
Like what kind of conflicts with whom? Like colleagues?
I think mostly business conflicts.
Oh, yeah. Really?
I read The Art of War, and I read The Prince by Machiavelli, and I read 48 Laws of Power. And maybe these kind of books, they fascinate me. And I speak all the time about generals and fights and stuff like that. And I like Napoleon Bonaparte. Maybe this is I majored in history also with language. I had my studies in history. That's why maybe I'm fascinated with this kind of. So it affects you one way or another, and maybe because I also like heavy metal music. Maybe it affects. I think it affects. I like Assassin's Creed, but yeah, some people they would maybe misunderstand my perception about business, because I like to do things the right way. So I had some kind of misunderstanding about how I do things in the past few years, but I still value my experience in vendor management because it was not really affected by
all the books.
It was not really affected. I still value, because I think my experience in vendor management is the only reason that I was able to succeed in other things.
Right.
If you remember, I said some of my vendors in the past, they actually became my clients in the future. And some of them, they became friends, very good. Some of them actually, they became family. And this is my understanding of things. And I still believe that even though in some situations I was quite ruthless and I showed no mercy, and I spilled some, not blood, I spilled some juice, but but I don't need. I'm not sure if you are going to cut this blood and war. But I really admire that your show and your programs are quite free, because mainly I really liked almost a lot of the discussions that you introduced on the channel, and I really wish that it has more views and more reach. Maybe because localization is still something that is for a niche network, maybe, but I hope so but the way I see, for example, I watch Nimdzi episodes and I follow them I really like how they speak freely about many things, and I think they are popular one way or another because the guys working on the company are very, very open for life and very, very, very nice.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the question, where does the misunderstanding come from? So we understood that you have a lot of influences from books and music and games, and you had business conflicts, but I still don't understand what exactly it is. So is the misunderstanding that maybe you appear to be ruthless while inside you're like a little baby and very sensitive, or?
Yeah, not really a baby, but in some I think this is something that maybe because I like to tell stories, sometimes people misunderstand.
Right.
And I seem to think this has a lot to do with anyone who's started to work in marketing and PR. So people will always misunderstand how he expresses things and stuff like that.
Right.
But I had a lot of situations where people thought that I am quite ruthless, and I don't think in an emotional. I prefer to try to, as much as I can, to separate between human feelings and professional
business. Right.
Yeah, but I mentioned to you that my MTPE, or not the MTPE, the Myers-Briggs test. That's what I say. Yes. MTPE because we are in the localization thing, but my analysis is more about the ENTJ thing. So that's why sometimes, I feel myself, I think I should have been easier in this situation. And I think I have a hard time with feelings. Yeah, somehow I have a hard time with feelings, or people who are actually all the time are feelers.
Right. Yeah.
People with the F, with this F. I have this kind of, but I really love them.
So you prefer people who use logic a lot, right?
Yeah. I prefer people who use the logic. Yeah.
I have the same.
But one way or another, we have to balance sometime. Yeah. Right. Management is all about trying to balance.
What do you think is wrong with our industry?
This is a very difficult question because I cannot see myself as this kind of a philosopher to say what is wrong. Because I think I'm still learning a lot of things.
Right.
But if you would ask me personally, I do not really like this idea of being just another email on a system. And this kind of idea that a system will count everything about that I do, or maybe I put some kind of a chip in my brain. And I don't like this idea. And although I understand it's a fact and it is something very nice. One of the companies I used to work with, and I used to be my client back in the day, and I realized they also changed their whole vendor management strategy, and they say they have everything on some kind of a portal where you go, look, if you find something that fits you, okay, apply. So, but what is the old-fashioned way of recruitment, guys? I'm going to be like but I seem to think that this kind of method enforces a lot of competition, maybe forces the competition to be stronger than before. And I think it's a fact, and we cannot, but I don't think I have this kind it's not me who can judge the industry. The industry is quite big. There are millions of things that I don't know. As I told you, I'm not a tech guy, but I understand that the industry is controlled or maybe directed by technology, and tech guys are taking over. It's a fact. I don't think I can say I like it or I don't like it, but let's see.
Do you have any absurd or stupid things that you do?
Stupid things? A lot of stupid things. I do a lot of stupid things. Yeah, no problem.
So which one do you think would be considered by, let's say, majority of the people as a stupid thing? But for you, it's very normal.
On a professional manner or maybe in life?
Whatever.
Sometimes I blame myself that I spent like 100 hours playing Assassin's Creed. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I blame myself not spending a lot of time with my son. I think this is something that I can say that this is stupid. I should have given him more time. We should talk more. Stuff like this. Yeah.
Can't you just play the game with him, or is he not old
enough?
He
loves it.
He loves it. Oh.
I don't have a multi-player option. But it's a very good idea. Maybe I can try.
Yeah.
And he's, he's kind of I think he's also like a general in himself. It's like a little Napoleon Bonaparte. He wants to play alone. Okay. He wants to control. He's like a control freak. So sometimes it's not easy.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not easy, but it's okay.
Right, Ahmed. Well, thank you very much for the interview, for your time.
I am very, very happy. And I think I find myself speaking freely, and I hope you also enjoyed it. I think you should give me this opportunity as well, that maybe we can interview you very soon, because you don't get to ask all the questions you should be asked as well. So I'm not sure if you have this time, but I wanted to ask you about your opinion about vendor management. You maybe, of course, you had experience and you dealt with hundreds and hundreds of vendors. This question I had in mind, and if you would like to perhaps give it in this closing moments, it's okay. I think that a lot of friends will appreciate this.
I don't think I have, far away from your experience, because I was mostly dealing with vendors from the production side. Mm-hmm. And I get your opinion that maybe it's turning into, I don't know, you're just being a resource ID. Mm-hmm. I'm also very much a tech guy, I would say. And I've been always, ever since I started working, I was looking for ways to work more efficiently. So to me, actually building the systems that make the work of PMs more efficient, or maybe even eliminate a lot of the work that they have to do, like manually send the emails, I'm all up for that. That was actually what I was doing in my last work. Like, we were doing a production system, sort of like a TMS, but that could also handle other things than translation. And we were creating this product. So I guess a lot of the translators probably didn't like me because they were just, first come, first served basis system. So if you're the first round to claim the job, then it's you. But there are also ways how you can customize the system so it still sort of values the people who, let's say, have been working on a certain account for quite some time. It's not like you just, mass send email to everyone for any type of job, so you can still have your preferred vendors, and maybe they have the priority when it comes to claiming the jobs, or there's a certain way. And also, when you were talking about the loyalty thing, that's also something that we were discussing with the vendor manager. And also, when we were introducing the system, we had like a meeting and we presented the system to them. So it wasn't just like purely through videos, but we also wanted to gather their feedback. So I think there were sort of like bits and pieces of what you were suggesting. And I agree, because also I can turn that not only from, let's say, LSP to vendor, but LSP to the client. Because that's what I realized recently, is that some of the LSPs, they're creating their systems where the clients, they just go to the system and they submit the files. But to me, this is a big problem, because, you should still do it if it makes the work flow more efficient, but you shouldn't forget about building a relationship with your client. Yeah. Because then someone else can come with a better system with lower prices. And if you don't have that relationship, you're just a commodity at that point.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with this.
Anyway, what I wanted to say is, again, thank you. But one more question. So, final words from you, Ahmed. If you could speak to the minds of everyone in the industry, what would you tell them?
I wish that conferences and traveling will be established again, once again. And so people can get to meet each other face to face. I understand that online is okay and it's going to be like a trend, but I wish that people can get to meet each other. And I also wish that international organizations and people like Multilingual Magazine, Localization Institute, NIMD, they would come to our countries, to the Middle East. So they meet with each other, so they teach us and learn from us and meet with the people from. I was very happy that some of the language industry tech companies started to come to Egypt, for example. XTRF did that, SmartCat. I wish that we can have this kind of communication more often. So we exchange experience. We like an opportunity like we have right now. If you remember, maybe I told you that I don't think you had any communication with someone from Egypt, because our friends in our community, they have been doing a lot of work, a lot of effort for like 30 years in the localization. They have been localizing a lot of Arabic content, and they have been producing a lot of products, and they maybe deserve to be heard for the better, and I think for the future. This is something that I wish that will happen very soon, that we get to communicate more than before.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, you are my first and hopefully not the last Egyptian guest.
Thank you so much. I think there will be an opportunity when you can speak with other friends, or perhaps doing marketing, doing project management, and localization engineering. And I have to say that localization engineers in the region, in Egypt or the Middle East, are actually very few. Maybe we can name them. Actually, I think they are about like 10 or 15 persons in the whole region. And this function is very important.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we can generate more soldiers when it comes to localization engineering. Yeah, really.
Right. Okay, I have an idea how to name this episode. It's like growing your army or something like that.
Yeah. Perhaps we should invite them to a lot of courses in education.
Right. All right, Ahmed, thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
Andy.
we'll be in
Thank you
touch.
so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.